Good evening, black people and all allies fighting for black liberation, black prosperity, and black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. Today has been a very big news day, including breaking late this evening. A federal judge has temporarily blocked Texas's new abortion law. Texas Republicans are likely to seek a reversal with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which originally allowed the law to take effect. And at this hour, Democrats on the Hill are indicating they will accept an offer from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to lift the debt limit for 2 months, temporarily avoiding an economic catastrophe. But McConnell's proposal this afternoon has strings attached, stating Republicans would not block a debt ceiling limit increase at a fixed dollar amount to cover current spending levels into December. But Democrats can accept this temporary victory for avoiding a crisis that would, as the White House put it, hinder the federal government from carrying out its basic obligations to millions of Americans, like benefit payments to retirees, Medicaid and Medicare providers, as well as financial assistance to millions of families and the newly expanded child tax credit. The reason McConnell caved into doing his job is because just the night before, President Biden threatened to use the nuclear option. Biden successfully got McConnell to cave because he applied the pressure, meeting today with top banking and financial leaders and pulling every lever of government necessary to make Republicans stop playing Russian roulette with the economy. But where is this same energy when it comes to protecting voting rights? Where is the determination to remove the obstacles in the way of passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, as well as the Freedom to Vote Act? Joining me now to discuss, Ben Jealous, president of People for the American Way and former president and CEO of the NAACP, and Cliff Albright, co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter, both of whom were arrested yesterday outside of the White House, demanding that President Biden call on the Senate to remove the filibuster and pass voting rights legislation. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here. I'm glad to see that you're out of the clink. Ben, so let's start with you, sir. So what was the nature of the protest yesterday? What were you trying to accomplish? And how did all of that go, including with the arrest?
You know, first of all, let me just say, on behalf of all the brothers and sisters who are still in the central cell block, DC's got to do something about the roaches. It's really out of control. Now, with that said, the reason that we went to jail, the reason that we were in those protests yesterday is it's time for Joe Biden to call on the Senate to remove the filibuster as an obstacle to getting these voting rights bills through. The only way that you get a carve out in the filibuster, let alone just get rid of the filibuster, either would be fine with us, is the president has to call on his party to do so. And so that's why we've taken the protests to the White House. The protests at the Senate, at Manchin's office, at Sinema's office, mean that we now have a bill that every Democrat will vote for. Now we've got to get that bill passed, and that's going to require Joe Biden doing exactly what he's been doing for roads and bridges for protecting our actual democracy.
Cliff, do you think that the president, who is obviously prioritizing the roads and bridges and the spending bill now, will be able to or will be inclined to pivot once that battle is over, assuming that it has a conclusion in the next few months, pivot and turn all of that energy into the voting rights legislation?
Yeah, Charles. Well, you asked two things there, right? Will he be able to? Yes, he's definitely able to. Is he inclined to? That's a whole nother story. That's why we've got to continue the pressure that we put on yesterday with our action, that we're going to continue, organizations like People for the American Way, League of Women's Voters, DFAD, our organization, we're going to continue to be out there over the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 weeks, doing pressure to make him be so inclined. What we know is that if he does the kind of things, look at the past 3, 4 days. On Friday, he goes to the Capitol in the midst of a stalemate, in the midst of so-called moderate, I don't call them moderates, they're really just conservative Democrats, but in the midst of some of the party not being willing to get down with the reconciliation to build back better, he goes on Friday. Now he affirmed that those two things have to be done together. That's what happens when you lean in. Then he comes out, you just played the clip. He comes out saying, oh yeah, we might use the nuclear option in regards to the budget, in regards to the debt. And now McConnell's saying what? Oh, okay, yeah, I might. When you just show them that you are willing to use your power, then folks will fall in line when you're the president of the United States. He's yet to do that on voting rights. When he fully leans in, then we'll get progress. And the last thing I'll say is it cannot wait until they finish negotiations on infrastructure. You see what's going on in these states like Texas and Georgia, where they're already drawing maps that is taking away Black and brown voting power. We can't wait for them to finish the infrastructure deal. They need to move on. They need to shift that list of priorities. They need to move on voting rights, because the Republicans aren't waiting for the gerrymandering and the voting suppression. We can't wait either to get our voting rights passed.
Amen.
Ben, Cliff makes an excellent point, which is the clock is ticking. At a certain point, you're already into the midterms. At a certain point, the districts are drawn. You have to start running unless a judge steps in and puts a block on it and make you run with the old district lines. You're going to be running with the new district lines. At a certain point, ballots are going to have to be printed. The clock just keeps ticking. The Vice President Harris gave an opening remarks today at a Voto Latino Power Summit. In her remarks, she pressed everyone to keep registering every voter. Yes, do that. But you can't out-organize voter suppression. Right. How do you get that across to this administration?
Well, frankly, by joining protests like this, by picking up the phone and calling the White House. Joe Biden, part of what triggered this was, on this point, maybe 6 weeks ago at a town hall, Joe Biden suggested that you just can't stop people from voting. That's ahistorical. My grandmother's 105 this November. Her grandfather was one of the last Blacks to serve in the Virginia legislature during Reconstruction. She knew him well. And it was precisely bills like this that ended his career. And as somebody who's won a Democratic primary in their statewide, was running for governor, I get calls from other young Black folks who were running for governor, running for Senate, and many of them worried that the voter suppression laws that have been passed in their states will be too high of a bar for any campaign by any Democrat to overcome. And that's terrifying. I never thought that I would
Cliff,
hear people talking like they did at the end of Reconstruction.
Cliff, you can make the argument that Republicans aren't scared of Democrats, but they are scared of big money. And Biden calling up all of the leaders of industry and saying, you guys put the pressure on because you guys are going to feel the pain if they allow us to, kind of default on our debt. Why isn't the administration calling in those people that the Republicans are actually afraid of, again, to make them shake in their boots like they did after, Georgia passed this law and businesses said, we don't want to do business. Sporting events said, we don't want to go there. And you saw Republican after Republican step into the mic saying, you guys stay out of it. You guys stay out of it. Because what they were really saying is, please don't, you guys are our money bags. Don't get mad at us. Please stay out of this.
That's right. No, you're exactly right. That's why we launched that corporate accountability campaign in Georgia and several other states a few months ago. We're going to be revisiting that. In fact, we're going to be pulling college students into it, trying to launch similar divestment movements to what we saw in the anti-apartheid divestment and what we've seen on the mass incarceration divestment, getting students to say to their colleges, look, we don't want you investing in companies that are in turn investing in voter suppression. So we're going to be revisiting that corporate accountability campaign and widening it. But you're absolutely right. Joe Biden could be doing the same thing. He could be doing his own corporate accountability campaign. He could be holding the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to task. The challenge is they see their their own interests directly connected to the debt ceiling, they don't necessarily see their interests directly connected to the battle for democracy and voting rights in this country. We need to do our jobs to remind them, but more importantly, just as you said, Joe Biden needs to tell them, look, if we can't have voting rights, then we can't get action on some of these other things that are more directly in those interests. That's using leverage. That's using power. And by the way, he could do that, but the Senate can also do that on some other things. The Senate, the democratically controlled Congress, could use some of the same leverage that some of those states were using against corporate accountability. The Congress could do the same thing and say, look, we want to see you all being more active. And if you're not going to get active, then you can't continue to reap the benefits, the economic benefits of this democracy if you're not willing to vote to support the voting rights that make this democracy possible. So they can all use their leverage. We're going to do our part, but like you said, we need Joe Biden to lean into that and lean into those donors and lean into those corporations that are funding the very people that are supporting voter suppression.
Ben, let's consider the worst case scenario. What happens if Senate Democrats do not alter or kill the filibuster in order to pass voting rights legislation? What does that mean for the country? What does that mean for black voters in this country who vote overwhelmingly, by the way, can't underscore this enough, for those Democrats?
It means two things. It really means three things. I think one, what you'll see is that Joe Biden's ratings amongst women and people of color, and let's not forget, it's not just black folks who are impacted. Frankly, it's working women of every color who are right in the crosshairs of this. And you will see his polls stay suppressed as they are right now. People expected him to be courage. He said that he would always have our back. He needs to show that and have our back. Two, what you'll see happen, quite frankly, is you'll see folks announcing that they're not running because of these laws. I'm firmly convinced of that, and it breaks my heart. Third, you will see voters in very long lines. You'll see voters.
Wait, why wouldn't they run? I'm curious. I'm curious you to explain that a little bit. Why wouldn't they run because of these laws?
You give up 2 years of your life. If you have kids, it's 2 years of your children's childhood. You got to ask everybody you've ever met to give you as much money as they possibly can. And for a lot of folks, they just simply ask, why would I do that if it was already like going to be very narrow, and this just pushed the odds way in the other party's direction? So that's why. And then what you will see is you will see some folks run, obviously, and you will see activists, likely including us, out there pushing everybody to vote, but also knowing that the headwinds are way harsher than they need to be. There is only one true antidote for massive state-level voter suppression laws like coming in a wave, and that is strong voting rights legislation. The thing we're trying to avoid with Joe Biden is him actually, frankly, settling into this notion that he's supposed to be the next FDR, when he's supposed to be more than that. Like LBJ, he's supposed to wrestle with the economy and entanglements overseas, as FDR did, and also lead on voting rights. But let's never forget, it was the movement that made LBJ move on voting rights. And that's why this work is so critical right now. And that's why we're asking everybody to go to pfaw.org, go to blackvotersmatter.org, go to leagueofwomenvoters.org. There's so many great groups involved, but we got to be organized. So get involved with one of them and let's move.
Ben Jealous and Cliff Albright, so glad to see you guys out of the slammer and away from the roaches and out here breathing free man's air. Thank you both for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.